Good evening on World News Tonight. Reviving ties. UK and China aim to boost diplomatic relations through better agreements as mutual benefits are on the table. Turbulent times. A flight headed to Adelaide from Melbourne is forced to take a detour and make an emergency landing as strong gusts persist. Nautical voyage. One American woman set out on a 3,000-mile journey across the seas in a solo adventure.
From Colombo, this is World News Tonight with Saneshit Dasanayaka.
Good evening. Thank you for joining World News Tonight on Other Than a News channel. I'm Saneshit Dasanayaka, and tonight we begin with updates on the diplomatic developments between China and the UK. Britain and China hailed a reset in relations after Prime Minister Keir Starmer and President Xi Jinping pledged a greater cooperation on trade, investment and technology to mutual benefits of both countries.
British Prime Minister Keir Starmer and China's Xi Jinping have signalled a reset after years of strained ties.
China is a vital player on the global stage, and it's vital that we build a more sophisticated relationship.
In a meeting on Thursday, Starmer told Xi the two sides should collaborate, but also allow meaningful dialogue on areas they disagree. He's the latest Western leader to engage in a flurry of diplomacy with China as nations hedge against unpredictability from the United States under President Donald Trump. Xi, meanwhile, said China was willing to develop a long-term, stable partnership with Britain. The first British leader to visit Beijing in 8 years, Starmer was seen interacting with local restaurant staff and touring the ancient Forbidden City. His centre-left Labour government has struggled to deliver economic growth, and he has made improving ties with the world's second-largest economy a priority, despite misgivings about spying and human rights. He told reporters the relationship with Beijing was in a strong place.
We made some really good progress on tariffs for whiskey, on visa-free travel to China, and on information exchange and cooperation on irregular migration, focusing particularly on small boats and engine parts. So a very good constructive meeting with real outcomes.
Some 50 business leaders have joined Starmer on his 4-day trip. In a major deal announcement, British drug maker AstraZeneca said on Thursday it would invest $15 billion in China through 2030. The plan is to boost medicines manufacturing as well as research and development. The company press release quoted the British leader as saying the expansion would support thousands of UK jobs. Starmer told reporters he also raised human rights issues with Xi. He said they had a respectful discussion about the case of Jimmy Lai, the former Hong Kong pro-democracy media tycoon and British citizen. Lai faces up to life in prison after he was convicted of crimes under a Beijing-imposed national security law.
Passengers have endured a wild ride on board a Qantas flight from Melbourne as strong winds forced pilots to emergency land at Edinburgh Air Force Base.
Descending across the northern suburbs, a passenger plane enters military airspace, making an unexpected landing far from its intended destination.
It was a long journey.
Pilots of QF 691 forced to touch down at the Edinburgh RAF base after abandoning attempts to land at Adelaide Airport in wind gusts up to 72 kilometres an hour.
It was horrendously bumpy. Very bumpy.
And we came in hot. It was not cool.
A flight radar shows the plane's path leaving Melbourne before heading north over the city and looping around the northern suburbs. Once safely on the ground in Edinburgh, another unexpected issue. A passenger in her 30s suffering a medical episode.
Thank you, cabin crew. Please arm doors and cross-check.
Others remaining on board several hours until the flight was back in the air just before 8 p.m. After another 15-minute hop to Adelaide Airport, the so-called scenic trip was finally over. It wasn't the only flight impacted by the wild weather. Several other domestic arrivals were delayed, while the diverted aircraft's return flight to Melbourne was scrapped altogether.
We were meant to leave at 6:30, then it got pushed back to 7:30, then 7:50, and now we've been told flight cancelled.
When asked if the plane had issues with its fuel reserves, Qantas said the flight had sufficient fuel to travel between Melbourne to Adelaide. Instead of circling for an extended time over Adelaide due to weather, the pilot made the decision to refuel at Edinburgh.
North Korean leader Kim Jong-un set a goal to carry out large-scale constructions projects this year, including industrial factories in 20 regions simultaneously, as the country gears up for a key party congress.
North Korea is preparing to hold the 9th Party Congress of the ruling Workers' Party to convene soon to set major policy goals. Kim said in a speech that they are now standing on the starting line of a gigantic struggle for another year aimed at transforming the regions. North Korean media said a conference of the Central Committee of the ruling Workers' Party of Korea elected delegates to be sent to the 9th Congress without naming the date of the Congress. This comes amid growing condemnation from other nations in the region such as Japan, who are wary of the increasing developments.
Venezuela passed a sweeping reform of its main oil law, backing interim President Delcy Rodriguez's proposal to lower taxes, expand oil ministry powers, and grant long-sought autonomy to private oil producers.
Venezuela has approved a sweeping reform of its main oil law, a fast-track move aimed at reviving the country's ailing energy industry. Lawmakers on Thursday backed interim President Delcy Rodriguez's proposal to lower taxes, expand the oil ministry's powers, and grant long-sought autonomy to private producers. The changes also opened the door to transferring assets currently controlled by state oil company PDVSA. The reform comes as U.S. President Donald Trump pushes a $100 billion reconstruction plan for Venezuela's oil sector, following the capture of President Nicolas Maduro earlier this month. Washington eased sanctions on Venezuelan crude exports shortly after the reform passed. The new law reverses 2 decades of strict nationalization that drove foreign majors like Exxon and ConocoPhillips out of the country. Potential investors have described it as good enough, though some former Venezuelan officials say it's unconstitutional. The government is expected to evaluate dozens of existing joint oil ventures over the next 6 months before signing new contracts under the updated model.
U.S. Border Czar Tom Homan said that federal agents would focus on targeted operations in Minneapolis, shifting away from the broad street sweeps that have drawn widespread outrage.
We will conduct targeted enforcement operations. Targeted.
U.S. Border Czar Tom Homan on Thursday said that federal agents would focus on targeted operations in Minneapolis, shifting away from the broad street sweeps that have drawn widespread outrage. After being installed as the new commander of President Donald Trump's immigration enforcement surge in the city, Homan added that he eventually plans to reduce the over 3,000 agents currently there if he receives cooperation from state and local leaders.
This is common sense cooperation that allows us to draw down on the number of people we have here. Yes, I said it. Draw down the number of people here. Because we have the efficiency and safety of the jails and the prison. Matter of fact, I have staff from CBP and from ICE working on a draw-down plan.
Homan's public remarks, his first since Trump dispatched him to the city on Monday in response to the national outcry, suggested a continued effort to de-escalate from the Trump administration, which has been under intensifying political pressure after 2 U.S. citizens were shot dead by federal agents.
This kind of conduct and siege needs to stop, not just in Minneapolis. It needs to stop nationwide.
Meanwhile, Minneapolis Mayor Jacob Frey called for an end to Trump's immigration enforcement surge in his city and across the United States, while addressing the National Conference of Mayors in Washington, D.C.
This is not a time to bend our heads in despair or out of fear that we may be next, because if we do not speak up, if we do not step out, it will be your city that is next.
Newly issued internal guidance from a high-ranking ICE official directs federal officers to refrain from unnecessary communication and engagement with, quote, agitators to avoid inflaming the situation, a departure from earlier tactics that included randomly stopping people on the street to demand documented proof of legal U.S. residence or citizenship.
Let's take a short commercial break. More world news on the other side. Welcome back. Iranians still daring to defy the regime chant death or freedom. Very little information and few videos have been coming out of Iran with the internet blackout. But chilling images from a few days ago show the regime's brutal crackdown.
Death or freedom, they chant, in rare pictures of Iranians still daring to defy the regime. This video shows students at the University of Medical Sciences in Tehran protesting against the ban on paying tribute to those killed in the largest wave of popular unrest for decades. With the internet blackout, very little information and few videos are coming out of Iran. But in these chilling images we received a couple of days ago, we get a taste of the regime's brutal crackdown. According to the human rights activists news agency, although internet access has been partially restored in recent days, many users continue to face restrictions and social media content is being filtered. This Iranian man living in Greece hasn't been able to reach his family for 3 weeks.
I'm trying any channels you can imagine, but it's really scary. I mean, I see the messages are not being delivered. I see no one is, or when I'm calling on their cell phone or their landline, I'm just hearing this, sorry, we cannot, connect you to this number. Try again later. I don't know if my relatives, my beloved ones are alive.
Even the death toll is still uncertain. NGOs have so far verified around 6,000 dead and are investigating 17,000 more. The country's Ministry of Health, though, says as many as 30,000 people could have been killed the 8th and 9th of January alone. Tens of thousands of people have also been arrested and thrown into overcrowded prisons, while the authorities are reportedly conducting a witch hunt for doctors who treated injured protesters.
Russia has stepped up its strikes against Ukraine's power and heating infrastructure, plunging residents into darkness and cold as temperatures have dropped as low as -20 Celsius. The EU is looking to step up support for Ukraine's power grid and is preparing a new round of sanctions on Moscow for the 4th anniversary of its invasion next month.
Russian strikes push Ukraine towards catastrophe. Kiev is currently facing prolonged winter power outages as intense Russian missile and drone attacks continue to damage Ukraine's energy infrastructure. Pictures released by private energy company DTEK revealed several power plants frozen over as residents continue to struggle with blackouts. Millions have now been stripped of power and heat while temperatures outside reach a bitter -20 degrees Celsius. Following a meeting of EU Ministers of Foreign Affairs on Thursday, EU Representative Kaja Kallas addressed the crisis.
They are bombing Ukrainians, trying to bomb and freeze them to surrender. And that's why we are also discussing the energy support that we can give them because it's very hard winter and Ukrainians are really suffering.
Many countries are keen to support Ukraine, including Poland, who have donated 400 power generators to the capital.
We are trying to respond where it is needed. There will also be other forms of assistance. The embassy is coordinating these channels of communication. You could say channels of assistance. Companies are coming forward from Poland. State-owned companies are coming forward.
Despite the brutal conditions, many Ukrainians responded to an appeal from Kiev authorities to help distribute food to residents hardest hit by the energy crisis. On Wednesday, security guard Nelia Denisenko joined a team of volunteers to hand out hot meals to those in need. Her own apartment has been without power or heating for a week.
I motivate myself by thinking that it's not as bad as it could be. I mean, you always need to have a spark in your heart to keep yourself warm, and when you have that spark, it will warm up the people around you.
Russia has increased bombardments beyond the front line that stretches across eastern and southern Ukraine, despite saying they want peace.
Portugal was hit hard by a particular violent storm that has left a trail of destruction and at least 4 dead across Portugal. Lisbon and the centre of the country were hit the hardest. All services remained suspended on several lines. Several schools remained closed and almost 450,000 customers were still without power.
Portugal's government is calling it an extreme climactic event. Heavy rains and winds of up to 150 kilometres an hour caused havoc across the country, uprooting trees and leaving 850,000 homes without power. At least one person died in the capital when a tree fell on their car. 3 others were also killed in the central district of Leiria.
It was extremely violent. I don't remember ever experiencing anything like it. We're not used to this kind of thing. It's quite unsettling. Nobody slept at home last night. It was really scary. We could feel the bed shaking, and we ended up with part of the roof torn off and damaged cars.
The storm covered roads with trees and debris, including the main highway and rail line linking Lisbon with the north. While in central Portugal, Storm Kirsten brought large snowfalls.
It was incredible. I've never seen snow like this before.
It caused school closures and played havoc with traffic, also affecting mobile and fixed-line telecommunications infrastructure.
We've already helped with transporting people to and from work, specifically the hospital and nursing homes located in the city centre.
After causing more than 3,000 weather-related incidents, according to authorities, the storm moved east into Spain, which is still recovering from Storm Joseph.
Niger's military ruler blamed French, Benin and Ivory Coast presidents for sponsoring the attack on Niamey International Airport, an accusation he made without offering any evidence.
Niger's military ruler, Abdourahmane Tiani, is vowing retaliation for what security sources described as a terrorist attack on Niamey's international airport on Wednesday night. Tiani accused the leaders of France, Benin, and Ivory Coast of sponsoring the attacks. He did not offer any evidence to back the assertion.
We remind the sponsors of these mercenaries, notably Emmanuel Macron, Patrice Talon, Alassane Ouattara. We have listened to them bark enough. They should also prepare to hear us roar.
Niger State TV reported that one of the assailants killed was a French national, though it offered no proof. The offices of the 3 presidents could not immediately be reached for comment. Tiani also thanked Russian troops stationed at the base for defending their area. Since seizing power, Niamey's military rulers, like those in Mali and Burkina Faso, have cut ties with Western powers and turned to Moscow for military support against insurgencies. Authorities say that a large uranium stockpile at the airport had not been affected by the attack. Sources estimate that about 1,000 metric tons of so-called yellow cake was moved to the location last year. That is after Niger seized control of a key mine from French nuclear firm Orano. Yellow cake is a powdered form of uranium that can be processed to make fuel for nuclear production. Satellite imagery showed damaged buildings and facilities at the army base after the attack. The incident briefly raised security concerns around the airport, a sensitive site in a country grappling with militant violence. Officials said calm had returned to the city, and daily life in the capital of about 1.5 million people was largely unaffected.
Residents of Irumo territory in the Democratic Republic of Congo recovered at least 11 bodies after Islamic State-linked militants killed civilians in a weekend attack on villages in eastern Congo.
An internal UN report said fighters from the Allied Democratic Forces attacked villages in the Ituri province early on Sunday, killing at least 22 civilians and abducting an unknown number of people. Residents began efforts to search nearby forest areas on Monday for bodies. On Tuesday, some returned with the remains of relatives they said had been killed during the attack, according to witnesses. Survivor Mistura Rebecca said the assailants arrived in the early morning hours, forcing families to flee.
I escaped. They arrived around 4 or 5 o'clock while my child was sleeping. When my husband heard, he asked me to bring the child. As my body was weakened by illness, I didn't want to leave, but he insisted. Then he took the child and left. That's when I followed him. My leg was hurting badly. I was falling each time. but I made an effort until we reached the forest, where we hid.
The ADF, a Ugandan armed group active in eastern Congo and recognized by the Islamic State as an affiliate, has continued deadly raids in Ituri and neighboring North Kivu provinces despite joint military operations by Congolese and Ugandan forces. The group is responsible for some of the region's deadliest attacks, according to the United Nations.
Let's take a short commercial break. More world news coming on the other side. And welcome back. An American woman set out to sea to break some records. Let's take a look at the story of Derana Smith and her 3,000-mile journey across Atlantic Ocean.
Hello from the middle of the Atlantic Ocean.
She's on a mission to row solo across the Atlantic. On December 14th, Derana Smith set out on her 3,000-mile journey from the Canary Islands to Antigua.
I'm currently in my first 24 hours at sea. Good morning from day 4.
The 25-year-old yoga instructor from Nebraska kept a video diary of her adventure on the high seas.
Merry Christmas from the middle of the Atlantic Ocean. It's New Year's Eve out here on the Atlantic Ocean. Day 17, day 27.
Chronicling the highs,
I saw a whale.
And the lows as she battled Mother Nature's wrath.
This morning was awful. It was really stressful.
She had a companion, just like Tom Hanks in the movie Castaway.
Wilson says hello. Day 46. This is my last night at sea.
Then today, after 46 days, 3 hours and 37 minutes at sea, mission accomplished. Cheers erupt as Derana returns to dry ground. Her overjoyed parents couldn't wait to give her a hug.
And with that, we come to the end of today's edition of World News Tonight. With the hopes of seeing you again, I'm Sinesh Dasnaika, and we leave you tonight with the visuals from a Chinese puppet show staged in Chile in celebration of Year of Horse. Do share your feedback with us via email at feedback.adncenglish@derana.lk or via WhatsApp at 076-805-7933. Thank you for watching World News Tonight on Other Derana News channel. Have a good night.